Hello, career thought leaders. Good to see you here today. And we are going to be talking about LinkedIn profiles and specifically the content piece and ways that you want to make sure you get in your own voice and ways that you might use AI tools. So, this is just a little bit of a preview because we're going to be having a deeper conversation on this topic next week with Denise Bittler as we gear up for our session on June 5th, talking about using AI and LinkedIn profiles and writing LinkedIn profiles in general, kind of step by step, section by section. What do you do in a LinkedIn profile? But today I want to talk about the power of story and the power of your voice. Now, people often get confused when we talk about stories in LinkedIn profiles, right? Won't that be boring? People don't want to read it. How are you going to get a story in there? But the idea behind it is that you have an opportunity in your LinkedIn profile to engage readers, to have people really want to spend some time and learn more about you. It's not a resume where they've got, whatever, 10 seconds to look at it and then they've got to move on. LinkedIn profile still needs to be scannable and easy to read, but we want to use the space that we have there to really tell more of the story. So if you're joining us today, drop a little note in the chat, say hello. And if you're watching the replay, let us know that you're watching the replay. And what do you think about storytelling in LinkedIn profiles? How do we help our clients do that? And why is it so powerful? So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit subscribe and the like button so that you'll get notified of when these videos come back. We come every Tuesday and talk about the now, the new, and the next in LinkedIn. Now, you might wonder, why are we talking about LinkedIn profiles right now? There are some new tools coming into the space, and there's been some changes in LinkedIn profiles. And what they're starting to do now is pull the About section up to the top of your profile again. So it used to be at the top of your profile, and then they introduced this featured section and your content, and everything kind of got in the way. And they said, okay, we're going to go back to the way that it used to be and lead with your About section. So how do we grab people in that first part of the About section so that they really want to stay and read what we have to say? Hi, Victoria. Thank you for joining us today. Good to see you. And we want to be able to engage the reader, but also understand kind of the trade-offs. So I like to think about the About section as a cover letter in theory. So if I'm reading someone's profile, I typically am only going to read the rest of their profile if it matches what I'm looking for in the fastest scammer scan that I can do. And if you look at especially LinkedIn profiles on your phone, you'll notice that the most prominent pieces of someone's profile are their headline and their job titles. Those things are big and bold and bigger text. And thinking about how you can stand out with those areas is really important. Um, Hi, Jane. Thanks for joining us. Hi, Chris. We will talk about AI and how it can help you. You just have to be careful so that, one, you don't end up sounding like everybody else, but two, that we don't lose the power of your story. And so we're celebrating Coaching Week again this week. I thought it was last week. Now they're saying it's this week. I don't know, whatever. We can celebrate it twice because it's really important. When we're talking about content, so resume or profile, or even the answers to interview questions, I'm very hesitant to have AI write those for us for more than just the reason of maybe sounding like everyone else or being obvious that we used AI, which AI uses certain words that make it obvious. Newer systems do less of that. But that's really not the point. The point is when you don't know your story, you are hollow. It's kind of like getting that hollow chocolate Easter bunny, right? It looks good on the outside and you take a bite and then it's like nothing. It's just air. Remember the first time we got one for one of my sons, like, Mom, there's nothing on the inside, right? We don't want our stories to feel like that. So when you don't think about your story, your brand is what we call it, but it's not branding like people think about branding. It's your core. What is important to you? What are your strengths? What are the things that you do really well? And then how does that connect to what the employer is looking for? And when you don't think through that, and you don't come up with stories, real things that you've done that connect the dots between who you are and the value that you offer for an organization, when you tell that story that maybe AI came up with, and even if you stick in your resume and you ask it to come up with stories, they're still hollow because they aren't something that you're telling. So we've got to be careful about that, not just because it's easy to see, because it is, but it's also easy to identify because it's got that hollow essence, right? There's nothing underneath it. There's no connection. There's no marketing there. So I like to say that AI can write fiction, AI can write marketing copy. The challenge with resumes and LinkedIn profiles is that it's really neither, because it's your stories, and AI can't write your stories because they're not out there on the internet for whatever 90% of us, right? Maybe it could write stories for Richard Branson or people that are always on the internet, but for the everyday person, it cannot write your stories because it doesn't have them. So we have to put the stories into it. And then it could help us make them shorter, make them cleaner, make them more powerful, perhaps incorporate keywords, but you have to be careful with that because when you ask AI to put the keywords for this job into your stories, it tends to kind of wipe out your story and just stick the keywords in there. And sometimes they don't make a lot of sense and it doesn't work out real well. So I like to ask it what words or what concepts are my stories missing, and then I've got to go back in and kind of weave those in myself. But this is the challenge for all of us, right? We want things to be faster, and I use AI all the time to write marketing content, but I have to put my own spin in it. And if I'm going to include a story, I have to put my own story in it because it can't do that. It can do a really good job of giving you a template, giving you ideas, giving you a story structure, giving you a post structure for LinkedIn, all of those things. But then you have to put the you in it, right? And that's where we come into with the resume and LinkedIn content, is that it doesn't work without the you in it. So yes, AI can write you an accomplishment, but it's not yours. And if you copy and paste that, you might find yourself in a sticky situation trying to speak to how you didn't do that when you get into an interview, right? Because you didn't really do that. And it usually is lacking the specifics that make it obvious that you did it. And we've been talking about for a decade about how resumes want to be differentiated with specifics instead of generics from a job description. It doesn't work that way. So when you think about your LinkedIn profile, there's some specific questions that we typically dive into to get that profile out. Why did you get into this type of work? Why did you get into that specific company? What about this work, keeps you coming back and keeps you interested in it? What is your best accomplishment? When we look at LinkedIn profiles, we really want more of the who than the what and the how. The what and the how is still going to be there, but that's kind of your resume content. And the LinkedIn gives you the chance to weave in the who, which AI can't do. So when we think about how it's different and how it needs to be different from your resume, it's kind of uniquely positioned to not be able to use AI to create the content. Now, what I've been playing around with quite a bit for the last year and a half is putting in the answers to those stories and having AI use them to write a profile. So one of my favorite prompts for LinkedIn profiles is to ask ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever, doesn't matter which system you use, to give you 4 or 5 structures for a LinkedIn about section. And it will spit out options, right? It'll spit out the option of a narrative or your top accomplishments, or I can't remember some of the other ones, right? The who, what, where, why, how. It can come up with, here's a few different ways to structure your LinkedIn about section. And then you can put someone's answers to those questions into LinkedIn and say, write an about section for this person in all 5 structures. Then what you get is choices. I love AI to give me choices. I don't like it to do really any one thing for me because It's just like when you take an assessment. You take an assessment, it never tells you this is the one thing you should be right? It just says here 10 things that fit with your interests, your skills, or whatever. So we want to use AI the same way. I can put in these stories, say, write me 5 about sections following those structures that it just came up with, or if you have one you like, you can plug that in, and it will write you 5 different options. Now you can see what fits best with that person's stories. You can pull from maybe different options and put something together that you like. You got some ideas about ways that your stories can be told, but you still get to choose which stories are told and the order and all of those things. So I like to do that. I hesitate to put in a resume and say, write a LinkedIn profile. Why? Because it can't do anything new or interesting unless you give it new and interesting content. All it's going to do is rehash the stories, maybe put in some keywords, but it usually does that a little bit obvious, like Mad Libs or where you just stuck in a word. That's what I feel like it does. It kind of finds a sentence and it sticks the word in there. So you want to be careful about that. The one thing that I'd highly recommend not to do is use LinkedIn's about section writer. It's bad. I don't know what model they've built it on, but it's significantly worse than any other model out there that's free. Gemini, free version of ChatGPT, which, by the way, yesterday got a huge upgrade. I haven't played around with it enough to share that information yet. Maybe on Friday. Maybe Friday we'll do a special live or something. I don't know. Watch out for that. But they just released a new model that is going to be free. It's going to allow some of the paid features to be available to everyone for free. We'll see how that hits. But you can use almost any version because you are putting in your stories and you're just asking it to rewrite those, which it's pretty good at as long as you give it some parameters and you play around with it. So those are some things that I'd recommend. I'd love to hear how you all are using it, how you're seeing it used. Hi, Lisa. Thanks for saying hi. Hi, Gary. It's a good evening there in Germany. Anne, good to see you. And Nancy, good to see you as well. So those are the things that I'd recommend for your about section. So you can use your stories and put those in the about section. Let's just do this. If you want some of those prompts, if you're not in our AI for Career Services sandbox, drop me a little note and I'll send you some of those prompts. We're also going to be sharing those in our session coming up in just a few weeks. What is it, June 5th? So June 5th, we're going to be doing a session on LinkedIn from generic to genius. So if you're interested in that, I think this is the right link. We're going to put it up there. Maybe we'll do this. I'm going to put it up there. So this is the information for that session. If you're not in our Career Industry Authority group, you can get a one-off session if you'd like and join us for Denise Bittler and I talking about LinkedIn profiles and how to use all of these systems, especially using AI in some of those storied ways that we were just talking about. So then the next thing is to think about headlines. And it's interesting, I just got a message from CoSchedule today about how their headline feature, because they have a feature that'll help you create a headline for an article or a subject line for an email, and it will grade it. Now they've got a feature for LinkedIn headlines, and I haven't tried it yet, but it's always interesting to try those systems, see how they work. I'd always try them for free first and see if they're that much more value add than the free things that you can use before you decide to buy something like that. So you can go into ChatGPT, Gemini, and ask it to create a headline for you. Now, I do the same thing for headlines that I do for about sections. So I go in, I say, ChatGPT, give me 5 different templates for a LinkedIn headline. And it will tell you, keywords, job title, branding headline, blah, blah, blah. It'll spit out 5 different options. Then you can feed in your resume, that about section that you've just had it help you write. You want to kind of clean it up first. And you could say, okay, I'm targeting this types of jobs. You've got to know who your audience is, but these are your targets. Here's the information. Give me 5 different headline options. You can even tell it to give you 2 headline options for each of the 5 models it created. Now you have 10 different options that you can pick and pull from the little phrases that you like, because that's typically what happens in its output, is that you get you know, 90%, maybe 70% stuff that you really don't like. It sounds generic, it sounds overused, it sounds funky, too clever. And so you're going to pull the pieces that you do like and you can create your headline from that. So if you're going to use those free tools, that's what I'd recommend. And then you could go over to something like CoSchedule, which grades it. But now you've got a good starter, you've got a couple of options, and you don't have to do as many tries in CoSchedule, which means you might be able to keep using the free version versus having to get into their paid version with as many renditions as you want, right? So it gives you that opportunity. Now, what I always say in the headline is that you want to include your job titles that you want to be found for. And there's a specific list of those inside of LinkedIn. It's kind of funny. I went into the deep dark hole of programming languages because someone had said that there's whatever 40,000 skills that LinkedIn has programmed in. So I want to see if I could find those 40,000 skills. And I did find the list, but as you can imagine, it's like ridiculously overwhelming. So what I'd recommend is using LinkedIn Explorer. And if you've never used LinkedIn Explorer, let me pull it up here really quick. I always think it's something that everybody knows about, but then it's just a good tool. So I'll share it anyways. So LinkedIn Explorer gives you the opportunity to be able to see what job titles people really are searching for on LinkedIn. And you can get the link here. I'll drop it in the chat. And then if somebody would grab it and put it in the rest of the chat, that would be awesome. Excellent. The link on the screen in the comments. Yes, I can do that as well. So here's the other one. LinkedIn Genius, if you want to join us on June 5th. So this one's LinkedIn Explorer, and some of you have probably seen this. If you have, drop in the chat. Let us know how you've been using it. It was meant to help people find career changes, but its suggestions are so close to each other that I really don't use it very much for career change, but I do use it for keyword research. And here's why. So if I'm in here and I want to see a job title, let's say I'm working with someone who is an engineer. I can type in here and this drop down shows me the top titles for engineer. These are the ones that a recruiter would be searching for. So I can go through, pick the ones that are most relevant for my job seeker, and then use those in that headline field. I want to use the titles that I want to be found for in my headline and preferably in my experience title sections as well. So I can put those in there. Then once I choose, my thing, I've got all the skills that it's looking for as well. And I could include some of those skills in my headline, could include those in my title sections. And of course, I can include them in the skills sections, especially now that I can have 100 skills in the skills section, I could include some of these there as well. So what I've had some of my clients do is they go through and for each job title that is relevant to them, they copy these words, put them in a spreadsheet, go through, remove any duplicates, and remove any that are not true of them, right? You don't want to put a skill in there that you don't have. So that they have found really helpful. They come through, they put all their relevant job titles in. Not every job title is going to show up, but most of them do. And then they copy these skills, put them in a spreadsheet, pare it down to the ones that are of most interest to them. Of course, on LinkedIn, you can use the resume feature very similarly. The challenge is that it is a premium feature, so you have to pay, and it will compare your resume to a job. So I can just pull up a resume. It will compare it to a job. It'll show you what skills are there and then what skills you need to add to be considered for that job. So it's a great feature, but again, it's paid, and I don't know that people need to pay for it when they can use the other site for free. And I just realized that you're not seeing it because that's what LinkedIn does. Um, sorry, jobs. If you go to the jobs tab here and then premium resume insights, I've already put in many resumes. So I just pull one up. You'd want to pull up the resume that's for the jobs that you're wanting to target, and it will give you the skills that you have and the skills that you're missing for the job that you're choosing right here as marketing specialist. So it's a good feature, but it is paid. So if your client wants to pay for LinkedIn for a month to play around with this, they could, or they could use the free version on that you get on LinkedIn Explorer. So those two tools can help you do keyword research. You want those keywords in your headline. You want those keywords in your titles of each experience entry. And I've been teaching this for almost a decade now, but still so few people do it. You have 110 characters in every title section in LinkedIn. Use those. It's almost as long as the headline used to be. You can have your title, alternate title, some keywords. I've done little tiny like branding statements or accomplishment statements in that title section. That's a section that we underutilize, and it shows up very prominently in the recruiter search view, and it definitely shows up prominently in just a normal search view when I'm looking through your profile. So I'd encourage you to use those. Uh, Thank you, Kathleen, for dropping in the LinkedIn Explorer link. Valerie, I'll send you the prompts, and I think you're in our AI sandbox, but I'll send you the prompts anyways. And then gives you the opportunity to just connect the information and do some fun things in a really fast manner. So instead of sitting there with, you know, brain block, you get some ideas and you start to think this works, this doesn't work. It doesn't mean that you ever want to copy and paste what it creates for you, right? You're putting in those job titles. You can use AI to ask it which ones are most important, but I like these other tools because they're connected to LinkedIn's user data. So LinkedIn Explorer is based on LinkedIn user data. So you know that those titles are the most common, which likely means that they're the ones that are going to be searched the most. So I will just say that the last thing we've got going on today, it ends today, is our Everything 30 for 30 promotion. So if you're not a member of the Career Industry Authority yet, or you didn't go to the conference that we just had a month ago, because you're in for 4 months anyways, you can have a 30-day preview of what we're doing in our community. And you get access to everything we've ever recorded, all the handouts we've ever created on all the resume types and LinkedIn and everything we've ever done. You get access to that for 30 days. So block out your calendar, sit down and do some learning in May and early June so that you can have that information ready to go to build your practice, build your business, help your students when they come back to campus. And that one is just if you go to careertl.com/everything30, everything 30. So that gives you that opportunity to just see what we're doing and to get access to everything that we've done, and everything that we're doing for the next 30 days. So I will be back here next Tuesday. I was just going to check my schedule. But yeah, Denise will be back here with me next Tuesday as well. We'll talk a little bit more about LinkedIn, get her perspective. If you have specific questions about LinkedIn profiles, especially, or LinkedIn in general, feel free to ask, and we can cover those when we have Denise join us next week. Thank you, everyone, and we will see you next Tuesday. If you're watching us on LinkedIn, make sure you hit that subscribe button so that you get notified when we go live or post our next video. Thank you, everyone.